Haruki Murakami in 2011 commented on Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and I am so excited about this because Murakami and McCarthy are two of the literary goats, and I am so grateful for the books they contributed during the modern era to show us, to show all the people who think that what is being shoved down our throats right now by the publishing industry is absolutely terrible, and that real writers still exist. And if you guys don't know, my name is Ian, and on this channel, we cover the best authors and the best books. I have a couple videos on Murakami in the playlist down below, and I have over 150 on Cormac McCarthy. So I would love it if I saw you here again, but first let's hear from Murakami. Quote, "Most near future fictions are boring," he told me. "It's always dark and always raining, and people are so unhappy. I like what Cormac McCarthy wrote, The Road. It's very well written, but still, it's boring. It's dark, and the people are eating people." George Orwell's 1984 is near future fiction, but this is near past fiction, he said of IQ 84, where you're looking at the same year from the opposite side. If it's near past, it's not boring. And Murakami is absolutely right on this point. I love The Road. It's great to see one of the best prose stylists enter the speculative fiction world and just throw out all the genre writers who have great plot and characterization, but haven't sat down and spent the time on sentence structure, on contrast, revising, layering a novel properly. And if you are out there grinding as an author and want to take that author feeling with you on the road, I have a whole collection of Cormac McCarthy t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves. You can check it out at shirtlore.com. There's a bunch of fun stuff. I actually don't have one on the road, but we do have most of the other novels up, and we should complete the McCarthy bibliography for matching apparel soon. You don't need to do that, any of those things, that really to be successful in the speculative fiction realm. If you can write good and you then have very strong plots and characters and a couple other elements, you will get published. And this is why there was such a I think that was a word, but negative reaction to McCarthy entering the science fiction realm. Everyone's like, he's taking space away from the science fiction authors, going crazy. Because deep down they know, much like S. Craig Zeller, that they'll never be able to touch McCarthy's prose and what he does in that realm, which is really the highest art of writing. Stories are retold again and again, but being able to write beautifully, that is continuing, and the bar keeps getting set higher and higher. And I think that's why Murakami says it's very well written, but it's boring. And I would 100% agree. The Road is what we would call a road novel. The same in The Crossing, in Outer Dark, All the Pretty Horses, and a little bit of Suttree. Those are novels about people traveling. And this is one of the kind of meta themes that McCarthy likes to use. And he strips the entire world. It's raining ash. It's dark. There's cannibals. But I don't think making me feel suspense and waiting for someone to get killed, because I know that they're not going to get killed for a while or eaten, is the highest form of literary fiction or even speculative fiction, which is what Murakami's talking about. And Murakami was doing this while he was preparing to launch his phenomenal book, IQ 84. And speaking of launches, I have just launched free daily discussions on Cormac McCarthy on my Cormac McCarthy Substack. And this is a place where you can say whatever you want about Cormac McCarthy. The Cormac McCarthy subreddit has been a group of negative Nancys since I first joined in 2013. And when you do find the occasional good thread, you have to slosh through 1,000 different questions and low-level discussions. So every single day, I am going to be having high-level discussions over on the Cormac McCarthy Substack. And over there, we also have, for $5 a month, the Cormac McCarthy Course, which has over 13 hours of content already. So the link for that and the t-shirts is down in the description below. And the difference between a McCarthy and a Murakami is that Murakami is in the lineage, or is a distant literary cousin to the American author Tom Robbins. They don't write these pessimistic artiste manqué figures. Sometimes their characters enter a state of melancholy and have a sense of loss, of bewilderment or obfuscation, but nonetheless, they have this spiritual bent within them that drives them toward action, that drives them on these mystical missions of revelation. Murakami does things that Cormac never does at a decent level. I know people are always like about Murakami's love scenes, like that they are weirdly written, but he does have romance within his novels outside of weird incest romances and a brief 15-page romance and All the Pretty Horses, McCarthy never touches the idea of love. And that's why men, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons they love him so much. And Murakami also understands subjective reality and experimentation and the living world of magical realism. As McCarthy moved toward fatalism, nihilism, scientism, even while maintaining an agnostic, optimistic view of reality because of his use of psychedelics, study of the occult, and general religious experiences, he was moving entropically. Murakami is moving syntropically. He is moving toward life. And in that ability to experiment, in IQ 84, I'm not really going to spoil anything, it takes place in the same year. There's this woman who goes into a tunnel. And when she leaves the tunnel, she's entered this parallel world. And there are these subtle changes that she starts to notice. And a lot of this is just a heavy use of contrast with elements and symbols. And it's somewhat ingenious because, once again, we get these speculative fiction novels. Like even another goat of the game, Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood wrote the novel Orcs and Crake about kind of this dystopian future. But it was laced with these environmental things, you know. As much as I love The Road and Cormac McCarthy's interest in the nuclear fallout or the caldera volcano exploding, it necessarily isn't that original. And it's always these environmental disasters. And even funnier, McCarthy didn't like magical realism, and probably never read Murakami. But it's funny, though, because McCarthy's last book, The Passenger, had some magical realist energy to it, with Alicia hallucinating the thalidomide kid and whatnot. And it's funny, though, because I feel like McCarthy could learn from Murakami in a couple different ways, because both IQ 84 and The Road really focus on this idea of isolation. And the main messaging of IQ 84, though, is that technology and this new global world has connected us together, but has made us more isolated. But Murakami, as always, gives us a road back through the idea of synchronicity. And McCarthy routinely rejects this idea throughout his novels, because one of the things that McCarthy does in his early drafts in a lot of his novels is create near misses with characters. He makes sure that things that should happen for a classic narrative, or to tie things together, or actually push any form of characterization or plot, doesn't happen. For instance, in Outer Dark, when you read it, it functions on a broken timeline where there are alternating chapters between the two main protagonists, and in each chapter it's a different part of their journey. And it feels like time is moving at the same time, but in one chapter they may be like a horse running across a bridge and something falling off the horse. And a couple chapters earlier, one of the characters heard that and was right near it, but there were these near misses. And there's a bunch in that novel, a bunch in The Orchard Keeper, Suttree, All the Pretty Horses, The Crossing. It's kind of a tactic that McCarthy uses. And I feel like you have had so many near misses lately on your journey to find good literary content on Instagram. And I just posted a new Cormac McCarthy reel and am committing myself to posting daily Cormac McCarthy content over on Instagram too, which will all be exclusive to the platform. So I will see you guys over there if you are an Instagram user. And then he also, of course, reduces any chance of us learning anything. In The Passenger, we don't get to see the final letter. In The Orchard Keeper, we don't get to learn the relation of two characters to each other. But in the earlier drafts, that stuff was available. And this is McCarthy's process I've talked about countless times on the show, where he overwrites and then underwrites and gets rid of a lot of these things that pull us in and make us feel magical. And that's what creates the empty feeling. He creates that magical feeling with his heavy nature writing and his beautiful style and some of the things that he does. But then he creates this opposite emptiness. But McCarthy doubles down on creation, on life. And this is the way. This is how I want to write at many different levels, because this is how you should live. When you open yourself up to the possibility of synchronicities and move beyond logic. The greatest thing I've ever done is become aware in as many moments as I can to noticing available synapses or synchronicities that are happening. And when a ton start happening to you, it becomes statistically impossible that we aren't at some level connected to some weird energy source that creates these synchronicities. And if you exist in logic land, you'll never be able to touch that. And I understand McCarthy's darkness and what he's trying to do with all that, but there are times when you should let that in. And McCarthy never let that in. And because of this, the road suffers a lot because McCarthy feels like it's the end of the road for him. It's very metaphorical to the life that he is living. And I have to tell you guys that McCarthy's sexual awakening through the nuclear bomb prompted him 6 decades earlier to start on a journey that would eventually lead to him writing his final original idea of the road. And you can figure out about this idea in this video right over here.